These are questions that people have asked me over the years, friends, family, audience members, the police, and things I've asked myself in moments of quietude. I've been a comedian for quite a while. I get asked 3 questions as a rule, which are where the toilets? Where the toilets is the first question I get asked generally. When I first started doing stand-up, I came off the more or less 3rd or 4th ever gig I had done, and people go, "Oh, that was great, really enjoyed that," and people were saying different things. The other comedians were very polite, and audience members, and suddenly I went, "Oh, excuse me," I thought I was going to say how great it was. Anyway, where the toilets? And I've never forgotten that, because it doesn't matter how good you think you are or how great you think you've gone, you're still, just a member of the public. So I sent him to the ladies. The first ever time that I performed comedy on stage was at my parents' synagogue. And what it was, I'd been living in London for a while and writing comedy for TV. I was writing for people like Freddie Starr, Russ Abbott. I hadn't gone into comedy yet. And I was asked to go and give a talk. They had a big anniversary celebration, so will you come down and give a talk? So I'd written this 10 minutes of stand-up, and I thought, brilliant, this is a great opportunity. I've never tried it before. I know a lot of the people there. It's a good opportunity to go down and try out this material. So I went down, it was a Sunday, I went down on the train. The train was delayed. As I arrived, they said to me, "You're on now." I went up in front of all these people, did my 10 minutes of stand-up to silence. I mean, absolute silence. I think one cough. Anyway, I walked off to the sound of my own footsteps, which is bizarrely high heels. And then the person who booked me came up and said, "Look, I'm really sorry. We did know you can do comedy." I'd actually gone on between a Holocaust survivor and the chief rabbi. And I thought, I'll never have as bad a gig as that. It's impossible so far. Thank goodness I haven't. So that was my first experience of stand-up comedy. Of course, I haven't always been a comedian. I was a baby for quite a while, and then went to school. I went to drama school for it was a 3-year course in drama school, and I was kicked out after just over a year. Asked to leave politely for. What happened was that we had a director to do a play, end of term plays, a big end of term production, and casting directors were going to be there, producers going to be directors, agents. It was a big thing. And the director who was doing the play didn't want to be there, and was telling us in rehearsals, "Look, I'm only doing this for the money. I should really be at the National." So nobody liked him. He hated drama students. So one day in rehearsal, before he turned up, we were all chatting about this, saying, "This is a big production. What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, somebody needs to go and speak to the principal, because he obviously doesn't like us. It's not going to help our performance." So they said, "Fine, you go and speak to her." So I said, "Okay." So I spoke to her, explained the situation, said, "We're not happy about this." She said, "Oh, I didn't know that at all." Followed me into the rehearsal room and said, "Look, Bennett's just told me this. Do you all feel the same way?" And they all went, "No." So she looked at me and I went, "Well, I'm sorry, I've obviously made a mistake." So she left, and the others came over and apologized. Look, we didn't want to make a fuss. And I went, no, it's absolutely fine. So on the opening night, in front of all these producers and directors and agents, I changed all my lines, and I turned Murder in the Cathedral into a comedy, which the audience seemed to enjoy. The cast didn't know where to come on, nobody knew their cues. So I just ended up doing monologues, which went down very well. The next day I had a letter from the principal saying the type of thing you did is not suitable for drama school, it's more suitable for a comedy club. I thought, brilliant. So that was my start into comedy. And then I had a succession of jobs. I was as a teacher for a while. I taught in a private Catholic girls' school, which was interesting. Of course, being the only man, there's a bit of a problem with love notes. But once I'd apologised, it was fine. And then then a succession of jobs up until this. That's the question I get asked more than any other question. Are you really Jewish and Welsh? As though I've made it up for comedic purposes. Because I am generally Jewish and Welsh. And that's something that I talk about on stage and have done from day one, my first ever gig. I spoke about being Jewish and Welsh, that was in a synagogue, so it was expected. But I always talk about it, and people generally don't believe it. I did a gig once in the north of England, and after the gig, a guy came up to me and went, "That's really funny, mate, pretending you're Jewish." And I was supposed to say, I'm not pretending, I've got a better imagination than that. And he carried on and went, because my mate was getting really wound up because he hates the Jews and he's going to come over and punch you. And that's when I realised that there are two sides to my characters, the Jewish side and the Welsh side. And I speak about this a lot. I sometimes feel that I've got a dragon on one shoulder and a rabbi on the other, which I think would be a great name for a pub, the Rabbi and Dragon. It would only serve bitter and the head of the pint would be missing. But yes, I really am Jewish and Welsh, which of course sounds like fun and games, but there are drawbacks, apart from one, obviously. But that's who I am, and you know, even when people do believe that I'm Jewish and Welsh, I get asked odd questions. I get asked things like, so are you 50% Jewish and 50% Welsh, or is it the other way around? I'm 100% both. Yes, I can. Do you want to see that? I'll show you that. It's
That is wrong.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Which superhero? I wasn't expecting that at all. I'm a big fan of superheroes. That's one of my things. I love superheroes. I like superheroes who've got a flaw or something they have to overcome. For example, Professor X is in a wheelchair, Daredevil is blind, Iron Man's got a bad heart, Thor has a 70s haircut. But I think if I were to be a superhero, I would be Wonder Man. And the reason I'd be Wonder Man is that I can imagine standing outside a burning building and somebody going, "Oh, Wonder Man, can you help?" And I go, "I wonder." I think it'd be a brilliant catchphrase. I love writing. I was a writer before I was a stand-up, and I enjoy doing it, and I've written for many TV programs, children's programs and stand-up programs and different things, and I do enjoy it. My favourite thing is to write a gag on the way to the gig and wonder to myself, I wonder how, if that will work, if that's fun enough, and then turn up the gig, do it and have it get a big laugh. That's my favourite thing, something that I've done within the last hour. And do it. So that aspect I enjoy. I enjoy performing. I like being on stage. The whole reason I got into stand-up was because I was writing for TV and watching some of my stuff being performed, and I thought, I think there's a better gag. I think it's funnier than that. But the only way I could find out if that were true was to do it myself. So I enjoy that. I've recently written a novel, which I'm very pleased with. It's a romantic comedy. And I've had great feedback from book publishers, going how much they enjoy it. It's great. I've had lovely comments from people who've read it. Everything's just great. The only problem is publishers won't publish it because I'm a man, which I don't know the rules of sexism, but I think that's probably one of them. But that's what they said to me. If you're a woman, we could publish it, but you're a man, and women don't want romantic comedies written by men, which I've got to say has annoyed me a bit. And people say to me, "Oh, do you think there's sexism around?" Well, there is sexism around, but it's also against men. I mean, that's a prime example. There's the television program Loose Women, which has been going on for ages. There's no male equivalent to that because that would be wrong, obviously. And Loose Women does annoy me because they talk in derogatory terms about their husbands and their boyfriends. If that was a male-orientated program with a group of men talking about their wives and girlfriends, that wouldn't last long, really. And one of the things that happened recently on Loose Women, one of the women said, all men stereotype about women, with no sense of irony whatsoever. I thought that's brilliant. So, in answer to the question, which is a brilliant question, I enjoy the writing because I enjoy performing it. I think that's the best way of summing it up. Yes, I was really arrested. I had my identity stolen. I had my identity stolen a few years ago, and it was devastating, and I lost everything and became penniless and homeless, and it was had to move back in with my parents. It was all very stressful. It took me about 2 years to clear my name. Anyway, a couple of years later, I wrote a show about it, a comedy show, probably some kind of cathartic reasoning. And the show did very well in the Edinburgh Festival, and on the back of it, a couple of things happened. One thing was I was asked to be the guest speaker at an international fraud convention in Poland. Yeah, you dreamt it. I did it, my friend. And that went very well. And the other thing I was asked to do was to make a documentary for Channel 4 on the subject of identity theft, which I did, and it was an interesting experience. A few things happened in the programme where I went through some of these bins at 1 o'clock in the morning where they'd thrown away a bank statement, a PIN, and I opened accounts in their names. I opened a little shopping stall in South Wales. I told people I could stop them from having their identity stolen if they gave me all their personal details. And I had a queue around the block of people doing that. And then I did the thing that was going to cause me most problems. Really, I stole the identity of the Home Secretary, which apparently is illegal. Channel 4 should perhaps have told me that at the time. They say they did. Maybe I wasn't listening. I was too caught up in the excitement. Anyway, apparently the police aren't too keen on people doing that, even though I was doing it for a point. I was doing it in the public interest, as I thought. And anyway, I did it, and I remember 6 o'clock one morning, 3 CID officers came to my house, 2 men and a woman, don't know whether 3, the woman could have taken me on her own. And they said, we're arresting you on suspicion of having obtained a driving licence, which I did in the name of the Home Secretary. And I said, well, there's no suspicion, I've done it. I told you I've done it, I wrote you into it, and I filmed myself doing it, there's no suspicion. They said, yes, we're arresting you on suspicion of having done that. I went, no, honestly, I've done it. I'm telling you now, I've done it. And they said, we can do this the easy or the hard way. So they took me, they arrested me outside my house and put me in the back of a police car. Oh, as they were putting me in the back of a police car, they went, you're lucky we didn't use this. And they opened the boot and they had a battering ram. I've got a bell. Anyway, I was arrested and thrown into a cell, and all quite unpleasant, really. But eventually released, and the programme did very well. I was BAFTA shortlisted. So am I pleased I did it? Do you know what, I prefer not to have gotten arrested, really. That's not a particularly pleasant experience. But yeah, but you know, I did it. And I've made a difference, and the difference I've made is that the driving licence application form has now been changed because of me. So that's something I'm quite proud of. I think comedy has changed quite a bit over the last few years. Audiences have certainly changed. A comedy audience now is used to watching comedy on television. So they turn up at a comedy club, expecting to see somebody off the telly. So, you know, I haven't been much on TV. I've made the documentary, but I've never been on Mock the Week. I've never been on Michael McIntyre's Roach. I've never been on Have I Got News For You? But I'll be honest, that's out of choice. Not mine, to be fair, but still. But that's what they want to see. They want to see people off the telly. And also because they watch comedy on TV, where you have a comedian coming on for 7-8 minutes doing their bit, and another comedian coming on, their attention span is about that long. So when you've been on stage for about 15 minutes, you can see them going, why is this person still on there? And because they watch so much at home on TV, they forget the etiquette. So they'll just, do you want a drink? I'm going to the bar, do you want anything? Or they'll just get up. And it's not because they're being rude, it's because that's what they do. That's the mindset is, I'm watching comedy, but it's okay, I can go and do this, I can go and do that, because it's not going to affect anybody. They just forget. So it has changed. I think the standard of material has changed. I don't think a lot of comedians are as funny as they were. And I'm talking about way back comedy I used to watch when I was growing up. You know, the Tommy Cooper and the Morecambe and Wise, and Dave Allen, I don't think there's the standard of writing anymore. I think it's a lot of style over content, unfortunately. Fortunately, I have both. So what next? It's a very, very difficult question to answer. I don't know why I wrote that. I've got a couple of sitcom ideas that I'd like to get off the ground. I've also got a panel game show idea, and I want to carry on writing good material and hoping the audiences continue to enjoy it as they have done so far. And world peace.